Yeah. Oh my goodness, we are live. Wow. All right. Everybody, hello. My name is Leanna, and on behalf of the entire Versus team, we wanted to welcome you to our very first Versus Fight Collective live. It's an exciting time, and we want to thank you for taking the time to be here. And of course, thank our Versus Fight Collective members as well for submitting some really great questions, most of which we'll get to today. And yeah, let's dive into it. First, before we actually start, I wanted to kind of go over why we've decided to start doing these lives. Actually, you know what? I should actually reference, there's some construction going on next door, so hopefully the jackhammering isn't too loud. If not, I promise, or if it is, I promise you it's only for a little bit and we will get through this. But yeah, why are we doing these lives? Well, we wanted to do this, I mean, for a very simple reason. Doing these lives is directly aligned to why we started the Versus Fight Collective in the first place, right? We wanted to create a space that exists so that you can ask questions and that together we can go deeper on the ideas and the insights and the observations that come up for all of us as we train in martial arts and as we live life as combat sports athletes and combat sports students. So, as you know, a lot of the ideas that we talk about in Versus, they center around fighting and fear and mindset and pressure and even the mechanics and the neuroscience behind everything, right? And, you know, there are things that we feel all the time as students and as athletes, but sometimes we don't always have like the language for it. Like we know that something is happening, but we can't quite name what that is. And so we wanted to kind of give a better space to kind of start pulling on those threads together as a community so that we can explore those ideas. And that's why we've started these lives. That's why we started the Versus Fight Collective, so that we could experience and talk with other athletes and other martial artists who are experiencing the same things. So yeah, today let's think about it as we're diving into some questions. We're not going to be able to answer everything in half an hour, but this is a starting point. And it's, you know, it's putting all these questions on the table, exploring them together, seeing where they lead. And, you know, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to add to them. If you take something away from today, that's probably the best thing. Any advice or insights, that would be amazing. And then we'll keep coming back to these and we'll keep doing these regularly so that we can talk as a community. So let's dive into it. Yeah, we're going to start with the first question from the Versus Fight Collective. All of these are from the VFC. So remember, if you do have a question, go to the VFC and sign up there and submit your question. The first one is from Mirko Celiberti. I really hope I'm saying that right, Mirko. If not, please, please, please correct me and forgive me. Mirko is actually, he's currently in fight camp for an upcoming K1 fight in March, and that's going to be his third fight. So we wish you all the best for that. Please let us know how fight camp is going and how you're feeling. But also thank you for taking the time for submitting a question. So Mirko is asking, I would like to get into the topic of how to act despite the feeling of fear, ways to train this skill, and how to overcome fear, as this is a topic I encounter a lot in my workspace, and especially in the fighting realm. So love this question. This question seems to come up a lot, and from what I've been discovering and researching and all the conversations that I've been having, fear, I don't think is something that you overcome, right? I don't think it's something that you actually want to overcome. It's something that you train alongside, right? Because the key thing here is that fear isn't actually dangerous. There's a reason that, you know, we feel fear, right? But a lot of what we call fear is kind of the nervous system just kind of reacting to something that isn't familiar or that it hasn't seen enough times yet, right? So obviously when fear happens, it spikes, right? It happens when the nervous system is like, wait, I don't recognize this situation. So you're asking, how do you train the body to kind of recognize that situation? And I think, and what I've learned through all the research, it's with everything, it's reps, it's repeated exposure, right? So repeated exposure teaches the body well, yeah, this is uncomfortable, but it's not unsafe. And that's how fear, I believe, stops being so overwhelming and it starts being more manageable. And a really good example of this is our podcast with Luke Howard, internationally recognized online boxing coach and big MMA boxing coach here in Bali as well, traveling around the world with people. But during our podcast, Luke actually talked about how he deliberately sets up losing situations with his athletes, right, in training and especially in fight camps. And it's not to break down their confidence, but it's to normalize discomfort and uncertainty. And so the idea is that like if you only ever train in situations when you're winning or where you're in control, where you're dominating, like fear, it stays unfamiliar, right? And unfamiliar sensations, they feel threatening, as we just talked about, even when they're not. So like Luke will set up some like drills. Here's some like practical examples, right? Starting in rounds when you're already tired. So you've got like fear, and then you've got fatigue, and you got to figure out how to actually make them work together so that you can still function, right? Sparring with a clear disadvantage, so starting in a bad position, or shorter rounds with somebody that's just clearly better than you. Reducing options on purpose, so like you can only use jabs or you can only use your defense. And then I love this one, staying present after a mistake. So like after you get clipped, or let's say you lose your balance or something like that, like you need to consciously, meaningfully practice how to not emotionally get triggered or how to exit the round after that, right? So the whole thing is repetitions through these uncertain situations. And I think the distinction there is that you're not trying to like create trauma. Like we said, we're not trying to like diminish confidence. We're trying to build confidence, right? But you're not being reckless and you're not creating trauma, but you're doing all of this through controlled exposure, which engages or teaches your system that you can stay engaged and that you can still function even when things aren't going your way. So key point there, if you only train when things feel good, then like that fear is always going to be like, it's going to stay like really, really loud, right? But if you train inside discomfort and you do that regularly, then that fear, like it loses its authority and therefore it loses its loudness. So yeah. So again, Mirko, thank you so much for your question again. Let us know how you're doing with Fight Camp, and yeah, we're all cheering for you here. Second question is, this question comes from Bindi, and I actually just want to thank him for sharing he shared a very personal and honest reflection of how he fell out of training and how he's feeling stuck and how he's trying to find like that thing, that spark, right, to start again, especially from a place that's very humbling. So yeah, it was a very honest post, and also I want to acknowledge the fight community, the versus Fight Collective, who joined the conversation and, you know, put in some really thoughtful, very supportive, very generous responses. And, you know, this is what the collective is all about. So thank you for that. So Bindi's question is, when is it okay or a good decision to say to yourself that you just gotta do it? I feel like this kind of mindset only gets you to a certain point before it eventually collapses and sets you back, at least for me. What's better, pure stubbornness or a thoughtful approach with the risk that you may lose your internal battle and thus not do the thing that you wanted to do? Great question, and I know that probably all of us can can identify with that, especially the stubbornness part, right? I feel like that's a very similar characteristic with us. But, you know, when I was reflecting on this question, I realized like this isn't just about motivation. This is about, when does pushing through help, or when does it actually make things worse, right? So again, I feel like I said this with the last question. The mantra or the thought of just do it isn't inherently bad, right? I think it's just incomplete, and it's only going to get you so far and under certain conditions. So like, again, through my learnings and research, just do it, or like maybe that stubbornness, it only works in like kind of more low stakes situations when the task is simple, when you're choosing to push through but you're not feeling forced, or like when you're understanding that you're doing this thing but you're not like, it's not like you love it, right? Whereas, like if you keep saying just do it and it collapses, here's when it quietly breaks down. When effort is no longer connected to values. That's a huge thing. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Or when discomfort, like it feels pointless, and when willpower actually becomes kind of like your last tool in your toolbox, or like your only strategy, right? And this got me to thinking about our podcast with Jonah Oliver. And gosh, we've had some really great guests, and I will reference a lot of these guests because Jonah Oliver, for example, he's a world-renowned sports psychologist and performance psychologist. He's worked with UFC fighters, F1 drivers, Olympians, national teams. And on our podcast, and I believe his episode came out in December, on our podcast, Jonah talks about how discipline and goals, they collapse when they're no longer anchored to values, right? So, and here's the pattern that he actually talked about. So when effort connects to something that you care about, discomfort is tolerable, right? It's okay. But when that connection fades, that discomfort, it starts to feel pointless. When discomfort feels pointless, then forcing yourself becomes the only option. And forcing yourself is only a short-term solution. And that's just how humans work, right? When you keep forcing yourself, you're essentially relying on this a threat-based activation. Your nervous system is interpreting like, oh, you have to push as pressure, as urgency, as like potential consequence. So then your sympathetic nervous system, it starts to like engage, and that's your fight or flight. And again, that's not a bad thing. We're conditioned, like we are built to have a fight or flight system. It's a system that's designed to help you act, but it's also a system that's only designed for short bursts, not for sustainability, not for sustained living. Your body cannot tolerate being in that state long term, right? I mean, as you know, when you're stressed, you got stress hormones, right? Your recovery isn't good. Your sleep sucks. Motivation, like you said, Bindi, motivation becomes really fragile, and every small obstacle becomes like this big kind of mountain to climb. So it's not about you being weak or undisciplined or needing more grit. It's about recognizing when pushing yourself is in service of something meaningful to you. And again, I encourage you guys to check out Jonah's podcast, because he talks about this and the values, and really understanding your why and the core, and not just the fluff of the why, not just the surface level, but inherent values. And that's what drives us, right? So yeah, I mean, stubbornness works when it's aligned with something that you've already chosen. Thoughtfulness matters when that alignment isn't clear anymore. The mistake is thinking that it has to be one or the other, right? They're not mutually exclusive. If you're forcing yourself constantly, right, something important might be missing. And usually, and what Jonah is saying is, the thing that's missing is the meaning. So yeah, so good luck with that, Bindi. Let us know how everything goes, and let's continue the conversation again in the VFC. All right, here we go. Okay, so there's two actual questions here. And this one is from, I hope I'm saying this right, Kiki Mayordomo, and he's from Marbella, so hola, Kiki. Kiki's actually a visual, cognitive, and mental coach for combat sports and athletic performance. How cool to have you in the VFC. Would love to keep chatting with you, Kiki. You did ask a very short, simple question. It is 2 parts, though, so let's get into it. I would love to know more about elite athletes in combat sports who have introduced specific cognitive training and breath work, also breath holding, and what advantage did they get from it? For example, Lomachenko or Usyk, right? Okay, so like I said, this question has 2 parts. cognitive training is one, and then breath work, breath holding, breathing exercises is another. We're not going to fully answer each of them in today's episode because they're such great questions and there is a lot to it. But I did want to touch on both of them briefly. First of all, the cognitive training, right? Cognitive training, and you mentioned Vasyl Lomachenko, right? And some of the unusual drills that he did, or that his father actually had created for him, which really, really cool. Super, super cool. I mean, not only were the drills cool, but just like the pattern. I mean, I think Vasyl Lomachenko wasn't allowed to actually even start boxing until he mastered dance, gymnastics, and tennis. And then his father let him actually put on some boxing gloves. But in addition to that kind of unorthodox training, his father was also doing a lot of drills and exercises with him, which they didn't have to do with mindset or motivation. They were all about like perception, attention, and decision-making under chaos. And there's some really cool videos of him doing something like it looks like he's playing Jenga or like dominoes or something. But yeah, just some brain cognitive thinking, cognitive training exercises. So yeah, doing those with the whole goal of faster information processing, less hesitation, and lower cognitive load, which we always talk about here. Lower cognitive load when things get messy is definitely an advantage. And I want to learn more about what these exercises do, and how this training has affected other or impacted other fighters in other disciplines as well, because it's definitely an advantage, especially in our world where exchanges happen very quickly, right? And you need to be able to act. So first of all, I'm curious if any of you guys have done any kind of cognitive training drills, or things that train your perception or decision making. Would love to know that. Drop your comment here or in the Fight Collective, and let's have a chat about that. And let me do a little bit more research on that, Kiki, as well as do more research on the breathwork question, because you're talking about breathwork and breath holding, and yeah, there's so many advantages and benefits from it. I tried actually some breath work. You know what? Before we go further, let's talk about breath work, because I know a lot of people think that that's like some kind of relaxation tool, which yes, it can be. But what we're talking about here is your breathing tolerance and creating higher tolerance for CO2, clearer thinking, like so you have more oxygen going later in the rounds, or when you're fatigued, or when you're feeling uncomfortable. So here in Bali, I have actually done, I'm going to say done, some breathwork training in a pool, and it was specifically designed for fighters. And we had to sink to the bottom of this pool in the deep end with some heavy dumbbells and actually walk across the bottom of the pool with the dumbbells. My fight or flight, it kicked right in. I am not comfortable underwater. I know I could have let go of the dumbbells and just floated back up, but just even knowing that I was under the water, holding these heavy dumbbells, trying to walk, it really freaked me out. So that kind of training, I mean, it's not just a physiological advantage, but it's definitely also a mental advantage, right? An emotional advantage. So I do want to research this more as well. I've had this actually on our list of topics to explore, because I also have the video of me kind of freaking out in the pool. So we'll definitely explore both of these in two different reels. Let me do a little bit more research on that, Kiki, and then maybe have some chats with you as well. And then, yeah, we'll release a little bit more information on a short form content reel, or maybe even ask some experts during the podcast. Also, I heard that there is a very good book called Breathe. It's on my iPad. I still haven't read it. Has anybody read that yet? And if so, have you applied that at all to the fight and to your training? I would love to know if you have. All right. Oh my goodness. How is it? We're already 20 minutes in. All right. Another question. This one is from Fleta Shala. Plata Shayla? Again, I really hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Please forgive me if I'm not. Fleta asked, why focus on mindset when technique is more concrete? Again, I love this question, especially for us as combat sports athletes. Hitting something or like just feeling something. Obviously, that's more tangible. It just feels like it's more useful. But mindset can be very vague in comparison. But the thing for me is that it's how you access that technique, right? Okay, so like technique, yes, is what you've trained, but your mindset determines whether you can access that technique under pressure. That's the simple thing for me. You don't lose technique in a fight, but you lose access to it. And we actually even have a conversation in the VFC about freezing under pressure. And this is actually what happens, right? When you're not training your mindset as well. So when pressure starts to escalate, all these things happen. We all know this. We say this a lot in our videos, right? The heart rate rises, your breathing tightens, your attention it starts to narrow, and you start actually making these kind of mistakes that you usually wouldn't make. And it's when all of those things happen, your timing, your decision making, right? Your perception, all of that changes. And that's why people, like we said, they freeze or they rush, or you might have had a game plan and you just completely forgot it, right? So that's all, like, again, your nervous system, it's under stress. But if you are regulated and if you're training your mindset to be more, I guess, in control, right? Then those things aren't going to happen as much, right? And like we talk about this in one of the videos about, I think it's about the champion's mind. We'll talk about it, I think, in a lot of the videos. But it's not about like, oh yeah, it is a champion's mindset. Sorry. It's not just that champions think more positively. It's that they know how to regulate their nervous system and their mindset so that their attention stays focused on the task, right? That their system stays online longer, and then when something happens or something that doesn't go their way, like they can recover faster, right? And so they're protecting their technique by practicing and increasing their mindset and the strength of their mindset. So that's why it's you can't look at it as something extra, and it's not something that you train instead of technique. It's they have to complement each other, right? It's that kind of that lock and key, right? And they have to actually work together. Okay. Okay. All right. The final two questions actually that we're going to touch on today. One is from James Carmen from Taiwan. Hi, James. He is asking, well, first of all, he said, thank you for this wonderful community. You're welcome. Thank you for being a part of it. He said, I've seen articles online talking about the cognitive benefits of practicing using your non-dominant hand for tasks like writing and drawing. What are your thoughts on incorporating this into combat sports training? I love this question. I'm not able to answer this question right now, but I have somebody definitely that is, and that is he was our last podcast guest, Tim Carroll. He's one of the leading researchers in motor control and motor learning at the University of Queensland. If you haven't checked out that episode, it's brilliant. He is brilliant. I want to ask him this question, and we will answer that on a future live, or we'll answer it within the VFC. So definitely we'll do that. And then Obud Atkinson from the UK, and I know, Obud, you're not here live right now because of the time difference, but I did want to address your question. Is there any evidence that cognitive training, gaming, and similar methods have a transferable benefit to boxing or combat sports? From what I've seen to date, only highly specific tasks have such benefits, but it would be really cool to see things that train raw cognitive attributes, especially in a gaming context, as I'm super interested in it. Love this question as well. Holy cow. So I can't answer this question directly right now, but again, I have an expert that can, and that would be Michelle Payne, in addition to Tim Carroll, because again, this is also talking about some cognitive tasks and kind of proprioception, perception, etc. So Michelle actually helped build one of Australia's first formal sports psychology programs, but she also is the performance coach and leading sports psychologist for some of the top esports teams in the world too. So I'm going to actually ask her that question, and we'll get that answered in a future live, which is cool. I would love to also know, though, if anybody else is interested in kind of this, this gaming, real life, connection, right? So I'd love to dive into that, especially as we start looking more at AI tools and, how AI is helping transform or change or, I don't know, improve, maybe, if there is, but I'm sure, improve combat sports training and martial arts training. So, yeah, again, drop us a note there. I would love to hear from you guys. All right, guys. So that is it for our first live. I mean, we've got 4 minutes left, but again, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining. It's really cool to actually do this live for the first time, and to answer questions from such a thoughtful community. Like, I don't know. I don't think that we at vrss ever realize, how how much of a community we could build, and how like the conversations and the chats that we could have and what we could learn from each other. So that is all because of you guys. So thank you very much. The quality of the conversation is exactly what we wanted to have in the first place, and we want to keep that going, right? So yeah, just some housekeeping things. If anything that we talked about tonight stuck with you or raised more questions than it answered, that is a good thing. That's the work that we're doing. That's a conversation that we want to keep going. As you know, the Fight Collective, it exists for these conversations. These are the conversations that don't fit into these short clips on Instagram or to, the hundreds of comments that we can get, or these quick answers. That's what the VFC is for. It is a place to pull all these threads together with people who actually train and think and care about this stuff. So we'll keep exploring these ideas through future lives, short form pieces, longer form pieces, and conversations on the podcast. We've got some really exciting guests coming up too, both on the VFC and the podcast, but some exclusive guests on the VFC. So make sure to tune in for that. Thanks for being here, guys. Thanks for showing up for yourself, for us, for your community. We'll see you inside the vrss Fight Collective. Thanks again.